Downhill. This is Josh Thompson, back today for another Reading Through the Bible video. Yesterday I gave you several questions to ask yourself as you read through the different passages in the Bible. I would like to start to dive more into what that looks like. Today we're going to look at the question, how did the original reader understand the passage that you're reading? And for the example of this, we're going to look at Leviticus 6, which is our Leviticus passage that we're reading today. In this passage in Leviticus, we see where it says, if anyone sins and is unfaithful to the Lord by deceiving his neighbor about something entrusted to him, or left in his care, or stolen, or if he cheats him, or if he finds lost property and lies about it, or if he swears falsely, or if he commits any such sin that people may do, when he thus sins and becomes guilty, he must return what was stolen or taken back or taken by extortion, or what was entrusted to him, or the lost property he found, or whatever it is that swore falsely about. He must make restitution in full, add a fifth of the value of it, and give it all to the owner on the day he presents his guilt offering. In a penalty, he must bring the priest, that is the Lord, his guilt offering, a ram from the flock, one without defect and of proper value. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him before the Lord, and he will be forgiven for any of these things he did that made him guilty. Now, if you are the original hearer of this, you would think of things differently than what you think of now. In today's world, in the 21st century American, we often think of the physical world and the spiritual world as separate. During this time of Leviticus, and in fact much of history, people would have thought as the physical world and the spiritual world connected, deeply connected, not in the sense that they're loosely connected. And here's a good example of this we see in Leviticus 6, that there is a crime that's been committed. If this is a law, this is a physical law, where injustice has been done. And so what the author of Leviticus, Moses, as tradition tells us, what he is saying here, right there in verse 5, he must make restitution in full, add a fifth of the value of it, and give it all to the owner of the day. Now that's making restitution. That's enacting justice. Injustice has been done. This is how you reconcile that. It's a physical. There's a crime committed. This is what needs to happen in order to make restitution, to make this crime, this injustice, to make injustice right. But there's also this spiritual aspect of this passage where he has to present a guilt offering to the priest. Now, we don't have that in our laws. You don't have to, if you go to jail, you don't have to go to the church to pay for your sin of that. And that's rightly so. We're not Israelites. We don't live in that time. God didn't come down and make our constitution. So rightly so. I'm not saying anything bad about that. But what the original hearers would have understood is that there's a close connection between the physical and the spiritual, that they cannot be divided. So when you read through Leviticus, you have to remember that you are thinking differently about the spiritual and the physical than they would. In fact, in some ways, what we need to do is reshape our thinking to understand that it's both. That we cannot separate the physical from the spiritual. So in other words, we cannot separate practice and character. That's one way that we would maybe understand the physical and spiritual and how we view spiritual. We cannot separate practice and character. So with our leaders, we would desire leaders that have good practice, so they in their business, in their doings, in their jobs, in their careers, that they have good ethics, that they're doing things rightly, but that we also desire them to have good character. That is the ideal leader. That is the ideal employee of anything, that you have good practice and good character. Now, we often try to separate that and say, well, it's okay if that leader only has good practice and not good character. And there is some of that is understandable. That while that's the ideal, that's not always what we get. Except for like people like pastors, it'd be bad if you have a pastor that's a good preacher that just does a lot of sinful things and doesn't care about it. But another way to think about this is that how we can't separate this. Don't you love Dairy Queen blizzards? I would not go to Dairy Queen and get a blizzard I'd probably get something with peanut butter, like Reese's Cups. I would not go in and I would not accept a blizzard if they said, hey, listen, here's your blizzard, but just to let you know that the ice cream is bad. That the milk that was used to make the ice cream, it's really sour, but we made the ice cream anyway. But it's okay. You can still have the blizzard because the Reese's Cups are good. I would not take that. That is not a good blizzard. That's not even a blizzard. It's trash. One of the things that we need to remind ourselves as we're reading through the Bible is that the physical and the spiritual are connected. They cannot be separated. In the same way, you would not accept a blizzard that had bad milk, but good toppings, or good milk, good ice cream, and bad toppings. You would not accept. You should not accept yourself to where you say, well, I have some good practices, but I'm just not a spiritual person. You can't do that. Not really. We know this. We know this, that there are people that do have maybe are good employees in the sense that they get their work done, but they have terrible home lives. What happens? Almost always, what happens is their character starts to bleed into their practice. You can't go about it any other way. So why is the ideal? Why do we want the ideal for our leaders? Why do we want the ideal for things going on, people that we interact with? Why do we want the ideal for the physical and the spiritual to reflect each other, to be connected? Well, it's because there's something in us that desires more. We want a God that has both extremely great practice and extremely great character. And we find that complete and ultimate in Jesus Christ. So that's just an example of when you're reading through the Bible, be thinking through that the reason that they talk about justice, practice, physical, and spiritual together is because that's the way they thought. Let that shape your thought process. I'm glad you joined us today. Tomorrow, we're reading Leviticus 7, Psalm 7 and 8, Proverbs 22, and we're getting into 1 Thessalonians 1. So we're finished with Colossians, getting into 1 Thessalonians. So make sure you read that. Make sure you're keeping up with that. If you're a little behind, that's okay. Just catch up. If you're way behind, even though this is like just the third day we've been doing this, you shouldn't be way behind. Then you got time, right? Then it's great that God has given us this time to catch up. I'm praying for you to continue on in reading God's Word, to allow God's Word to shape your mind and your heart. Mind, physical, heart, spiritual. See? Another way we talk about that. Until next time,